Chapter 19. The Land of the Old Woman. The children and the others were quite shocked at being thrown up the ladder through the hole in the cloud into such a funny land. It was quite small, not much larger than a big garden. It had a high wall all around to prevent the children from falling off the edge of the land, and in the middle was a really peculiar thing. "It's the shoe," said Joe. "Gosh, I never imagined it be such a big one, did you?" Everyone stared at the shoe. It was as big as an ordinary house and had been made very cleverly into a cottage. Windows were made in the side, and the door had been cut out. A roof had been put on, and the chimney smoked from it. A rose tree climbed around, and honeysuckle covered one side. "So that's the shoe where those naughty children live," said Beth excitedly. "I never thought it would be quite like that." "How did the old woman get such a big one?" "Well, it once belonged to a giant, you know," said Silky. "The old woman did him a good turn, and asked him for one of his old boots. She had so many children that she couldn't get an ordinary house, so the giant gave her one of his biggest boots, and she got her brother to make it into a house." "Look at all those children," said Moonface. "They're all not very well behaved." About 20 boys and girls were playing around the house. They shouted and screamed, and they fought and wrestled with one another. "I'm not surprised the old woman wouldn't allow them bread with their soup, and punished them and sent them to bed," said Silky. "They deserved it." The children suddenly saw Joe and the others, and ran up to them. They pulled Beth's hair and tugged on the saucepan man's kettles. They made fun of Moonface's round face, and trod on Joe's toes, and bumped into Rick. They were very naughty and very unkind. "Now, you stop that, all this," said Moonface, looking angry. "If you don't, I'll fetch the old woman." "She isn't here," shouted the naughty children, dancing around in delight. "She says she's going to go away and leave us, and we're glad. Now we shall have bread with our soup, and we shall go to the cupboard and open cans of pineapple and jars of cherries, and we'll sleep outdoors if we like, and we'll dress up in the old woman's clothes." "Whatever will she say to that?" said Beth in horror, thinking of her own mother if she'd stolen her clothes. "Oh, she would be furious," cried the children, "but she's gone, so she won't know. Oh, we'll have a great time now." One of the children in the shoe called to the others, "I've opened a can of pineapples. Come and taste how lovely they are." With screams of delight, the children rushed into the shoe. Joe looked at the others. "I've got an idea," he said. "What about telling the old woman what the children are dressing up in her best clothes? She might rush back to them and to get her precious clothes, and then we could slip down the ladder, go to Moonface's house, and then bolt it from the inside." "That's a really good idea," said Silky. "Joe, you go down and tell her." Joe was rather nervous about it. Nobody really wanted to go and see the fierce old lady again. At last Rick said he would. He so badly wanted to make up for all the silly things that he'd done a few days before. "I'll go," he said, and down the ladder he went. He banged hard on Moonface's door, and the old woman answered it. "Old woman, do you want your best clothes?" began Rick, "because if—" But he was quickly interrupted. "My best clothes? I'd forgotten all about them," cried the old woman. "Those children will be messing about with them. Boy, go to my house, go and get all my clothes, and then bring them down to me. You can have a toffee if you do." "Well, I think—" But before Rick could begin, the old woman had closed the door and refused to listen. "Go now, don't stop, and don't argue with me. Go at once." Rick ran up the ladder. He waited there a minute or two, his head sticking into the land above. He saw the naughty children coming out of the shoe dressed up in the old woman's clothes, shrieking with laughter, and how funny they looked, dressing up in long skirts and dresses and hats. Rick grinned to himself and then slipped down the ladder again. He banged on Moonface's door. "Well, have you brought my clothes?" asked the old woman, opening the door. "You naughty boy, you haven't." "Please, old woman, I couldn't bring them," said Rick, in the most politest voice. "You see, your children have taken them, and they are dancing about wearing them. And they've opened your cans of pineapple, and they're going to take their beds outdoors and sleep there, and—" But before he could carry on, the old woman interrupted. "Oh, oh! The bad, naughty creatures!" cried the old woman. She gathered up her black skirt and climbed the ladder at top speed. She appeared in the land above and saw at once her naughty children dancing about in her best clothes. She rushed after the surprised children. "So you thought you could be like this, did you?" she cried. "You thought I'd never come back. Well, I am here, and I'll soon show you how to be sorry." She was so angry that she rushed around like a whirlwind. The children took off the clothes in fright and ran away like hares. The old woman ran after them, so angry that she didn't notice that Joe and the others were not her own children, and they got whirlwinded into the shoe with the others. There they all were, about 25 to 26 of them. There was a big saucepan simmering on the kitchen stove. "Get the soup bowls," ordered the old woman. "No bread for any of you tonight. Mary, Jean, Tom, serve out the bowls to the others, and then come back to me one at a time for your supper." Joe and the others had bowls given to them. They didn't dare say anything. They went up for soup when it was their turn, and the old woman ladled out of the big saucepan. She stared at Saucepan Man when he came up. "You bad boy," she said. "You've played a game with my kettles and saucepans, I see. Wait till you've finished your soup, and I'll punish you." Poor old Saucepan Man trembled so much that the pans clattered together as loudly as thunder. He rushed back to his place at once, spilling the soup as he went. "I want some bread," wailed the little boy, but he didn't get any. Everyone ate their soup, which was really very good. "And now you will all go to bed, but first, you know what happens to naughty children," said the old woman, and she shook her fist. All the children began to howl and cry. "We're sorry, we're so sorry," yelled the naughty children. "We didn't mean to dress up in your clothes." "Oh, yes, you did," said the old woman. She beckoned to Rick. "Come here, you bad boy." Rick got up. He whispered to the others, Look, I'll let her punish me, and while she does, you creep out and run down to the ladder. Hurry, I'll join you as soon as I can." Rick went boldly up to the old woman. Put your hands on your head and stand in the corner," she said. Poor Rick. He didn't like it at all, because it made his arms ache. He began to howl as loudly as he could, so that the others could creep away without being heard. One by one, they slipped out of the door and rushed to the hole, looking for the ladder that led down to the faraway tree. "Oh no, I believe this land is just about to move," said Moonface, looking around. A peculiar wind had got up and was blowing around them. Very often when the strange lands at the top of the tree begin to move, this strange wind blows. "Well, quick, let's get down the ladder," cried Silky. "We don't want to live in the land of the old woman. I hate it." They all scrambled down the ladder, glad to be on the broad branch at the bottom of the ladder. Then they were safely where they safely were, Beth began to cry. "Poor Rick, he's left behind," she sobbed. Everyone looked very sad. The land above the cloud was beginning to make a strange noise. "It's moving on," said Moonface. "We'll never see Rick again." But just then someone came slipping down the ladder. Bump, 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 and, hey presto, there was Rick, in such a hurry to get down before the land moved right away that he had missed his footing and slid down the ladder from the top to the bottom. "Rick, Rick, we're so glad to see you," cried the others. "What happened? Well, the old woman punished me, as you saw, grinned Rick, and then, when I went to take my place, she saw you were all gone and sent me after you. I tore out, and she came too, but I got to the ladder first, and now the land has moved. So we're safe. Moonface went into his house, and they heard him banging about loudly. They went to see what he was doing. He was taking up the board that nailed up the slippery slip, giggled Joe. Good old Saucepan Man. Good old Moonface. I'm glad to see he's got his house back to himself. Come on, we'd better go home. We promised Mother that we wouldn't be long, and it's a good thing that we came when we did. Can we use your slippery slip? And down they went, their hair streaming out as they flew down on their cushions. What exciting times they have, don't you think?